this won't be your usual climate change lecture. It will be quite a short presentation because we want to have a lot of time for discussion, because that's when the spiritual richness comes out. It also won't be usual because for those of you who are not familiar with Quaker methodology, when we speak from a place of discernment. It's a very key word, discernment. Somebody pointed out to me the other day that it's not actually defined in Quaker Faith and Practice, which is our central book. Discernment isn't actually defined, although it's central to our approach. And etymologically, it's coming from di, meaning to cut across as in diagonal, to cut through, and siner, meaning to sift, like you sift the gravel to get the gold out. So discernment approach. The message saying recording still. Got gremlins. To discern is to cut through, to sift right through something. And so you will notice I speak relatively slowly. There may be quite long pauses, because in Quaker approach, we try to speak in a way that is moved by a deeper spirit than just from ourselves. Climate change. I think that most of you here will already have a general familiarity of what is happening. And there's no need for me to go over that ground and summarize the science for you. In Riders in the Storm here, that's the new cover in case it looks different from the copy that some of you might have. In Riders on the Storm, the first 4 chapters summarize the science of the IPCC's special reports. And that science is profoundly alarming. But as my colleague in America, Michael Mann, who was the one who first came up with the idea of the hockey stick curve of warming going like this, as Michael Mann says, climate change is alarming, but we must be careful not to overstate the case, not to be alarmist. The problem with exaggerating the science of climate change is that it takes us out of the discerned truth of climate change. What do I mean by discerned truth? I mean the consensus expert science. Consensus, because we are looking at a complexity that requires many disciplines and many points of view to form a picture. No one person can grasp it. Any one person who claims to have grasped it, in my view, is not deeply discerning the truth. Consensus expert. We are looking at things which can be profoundly complicated. If we purport to be experts in climate modeling, but we do not understand the complex mathematics and physics that goes into these models, again, consider we may not be in alignment with discerned truth. Consensus expert science science as being an approach to knowing that is based on evidence. That you don't say what is or is not unless you can say so from a basis that is evidence-based, based in experiment or carefully measured observation. You might think that that has little, therefore, to do with spirituality. But I would put it to you that especially in the Quaker tradition, our spiritual approach is experiential. We don't so much say, I believe this or that, but in our tradition, we will speak from our experience, fully aware, hopefully, of the limitations of our experience, and therefore why in Quaker tradition, especially following on from the James Naylor scandal in Bristol in early Quakerism, which forced an organization of the society, we don't go off as lone wolves doing our own thing in the name of Quakerism. Rather, we ask that the work we are doing is held in the light and held by the community around us. Again, that consensus, as in consensus expert science, applies spiritually as well as to scientific methodology. Why is this so important? It's so important because on the one hand, in the climate change debate, we have those who deny that it is happening. Those who may be funded by fossil fuel companies or may be attention seeking or maybe often are simply misinformed and perhaps don't want to be informed. They've made up their minds about it. It is not happening, it's an exaggeration, or even if it is happening, there's nothing we can do about it. It would be too expensive to fix it. And you get whole institutes funded by wealthy people, such as the Global Warming Policy Foundation, that present such a view that counsels against radical action because it says if there is a problem, or in as much as there is a problem, science and technology in the future will sort it out. Again, one of these things that is probably a part truth, but not a whole truth. Set against that, you have the alarmist position that I've already alluded to, of those who would frighten others into action by exaggerating the position. I don't need to go in detail into that. I've carefully documented it in chapter 6 here. Other people have documented it also. But the problem with alarmism, the problem with saying we need to give people a bit more of a fright, we need to ramp it up a bit, is that if it doesn't come out, as we've said, for example, if you take the American ecologist, Professor Guy McPherson, who predicts outright human extinction, complete human extinction by the year 2026, based, he says, upon the science. If that doesn't come true by 2026, you're into the realm of manifest false prophecy. And if people use science to back up such claims, in the public eye, they discredit the science also. There is also another problem with an alarmist view, is that it forces you into the short-term fix. It's a gift to those who would counsel in favor of approaches like geoengineering, which would turn down the intensity of the sun, whether by mirrors in space or pumping sulfur dioxide into the upper atmosphere or various other approaches that they have, basically tampering with the climate of the Earth in order to reduce the heating, but of course not the ocean acidification and not dealing with the political issues that would come about. Who would have the power to decide whose climate was changed in order to cool the planet generally? So if you exaggerate the science, you push things in the direction of short-term fixes out of panic measures, and therefore you curtail the medium to longer-term approaches, which in my view are the only way we can humanely handle this. The task we are facing is huge. We have to stop emitting carbon dioxide because on human timescales, it is permanent in the atmosphere. It builds up and up and up on a human timescale. At present, we're emitting globally about 55 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent meaning counting other gases like methane in terms of their carbon dioxide equivalent. 55 billion tons, 55 gigatons a year. And it's just going up and up. Where does that leave us? Where does that leave us? If I just turn my camera around, I'll show you where I'm speaking from. I'm speaking from Govan in Glasgow. There's our garden down there, which is mainly my wife's doing. We're in a light industrial area. You can see a factory there, a school there, and immediately over there, 1 mile over there, is where COP26 took place. We're right in the heart of it here. And of course, what happened is what we all rather gloomily expected would happen. They came, they saw, and they decided not to come. At least not in the kind of 55 gigaton scale that we're talking about. And my personal view is that we have to understand why that is. Because in democratic societies, the people empowered to make decisions on our behalf are elected politicians. And in democratic societies, you only hold on to power if you please the electorate. There's a little book that I've got up here. Where is it? By Extinction Rebellion. This is not a drill. Pushing for net zero by 2025. Net zero by 2025. If I can just quote you a passage that I've got here. One of the writers in that book, Hazel Healy, describes what would be required in very honest, matter-of-fact terms. She says, energy would be stringently rationed, dedicated to survival and essential activities. We'd go to bed early and rise with the sun. Expect massive disruption in the way food is grown, processed, and distributed. Globally, there would be much reduced private car use, virtually no aviation, haulage, or shipping, spelling a dramatic end to material globalization as we know it. She's not being ironic here. She's just saying what it would take to have net zero 2025. She goes on to say, but how to enact change on this scale? To avoid a totalitarian eco-fascist dystopia, a zero carbon plan delivered at this rate would need to be contingent on total buy-in, perhaps triggered by a sooner than expected suite of apocalyptic impacts, such as a collapse of pollinating insects, severe typhoons, and saltwater flooding. Well, I think we're already seeing how when these major things, what would have been huge things even just 10 years ago, come about, people very quickly get back to normal and they carry on voting for political parties which are not going to disrupt their way of life particularly, because their attitude is, it'll see me out. And the other reason why it's so hard for politicians to do anything is what the Centre for Alternative Technology in Wales and its Zero Carbon Britain report from 2019 speaks of as a physics-politics gap. Namely, if we analyze these physical requirements and work out a physically credible plan based on our scientific knowledge of the situation, which is what the IPCC's 1.5-degree report does, we find it does not fit comfortably into the frame of normal politics and economics. In fact, a huge gulf between what is physically demanded by science and what is seen as politically possible is revealed. So there is the situation that we are in, folks. We are in a situation one of the problems of giving a talk in the way I described, of taking it as it comes, discerning it, is you don't immediately have everything you need straight in front of you in a pile. So I have to reach to them from the shelf. But there is a situation we're in of the world being faced by a problem that we all wish would go away. A problem that does have solutions. There are ways we can gradually, not immediately, but gradually shift our energy use over to low carbon or zero carbon approaches. And that is starting to happen in some sectors like electricity generation. You know, much of the time in Scotland, our electricity here is net zero because we have a lot of wind power, but other places aren't blessed with that kind of thing. So one can only say it's beginning to happen. And we all know it's not happening fast enough. So where does this leave us? Spiritually, it leaves us with the prospect of a world that is already suffering in some places, and the suffering that is likely to intensify. When the IPCC looks at things like climate change and conflict, or climate change and refugees, its conclusion is that the jury is out, because there are so many factors behind conflict and refugees that it's actually not all that often you can really nail it down and say this one is caused by climate change. But what the IPCC is very clear on, as indeed are major defense institutions around the world, is that climate change is a risk multiplier. That's the term they use, a risk multiplier. It amps up the other things that are going on. And what that says to me is that that's going to pose increasing challenges to our humanity. That means in practical terms, for each one of you, each one of us that I see on the screen in front of me just now, the burning issue is how do we deepen our humanity? And that then poses the question, what does it mean to be a human being? I'm seeing that somebody very kindly just flashed up, maybe it's in the chat, the latest assessment report, AR6 here, which is the one that I reached for here, the assessment report number 6. And thank you for that prompt, whoever did that, but if I can just find the page here. I would say the main thing about this recent report is that it further refines, it doesn't change the science, but it further refines the science. It emphasizes the interdependence across different disciplines natural, ecological, social, and economic sciences, etc., saying it does this far more than earlier assessments. It names the problem. This is right in the second paragraph of the introduction on page 7 of the summary for policymakers. It actually names unsustainable consumption as a core problem. Human demographic shifts, social and economic inequalities, and a pandemic are named. And it goes on, if I turn to a couple of pages ahead, it brings in something that I haven't seen in any of the others except in the small print. It's saying that the solutions that lie ahead have got to conform with principles of justice. The term climate justice, while used in different ways, etc., includes 3 principles. Distributive justice, which refers to the allocation of burdens and benefits amongst individuals, nations, and generations. Procedural justice, which refers to who decides and participates in decision-making. And the justice of recognition, which entails basic respect and robust engagement with and fair consideration of diverse cultures and perspectives. I think that's a wonderful thing. I hadn't seen it commented on till I was going to speak to the Eco Congregation organization in Scotland the other day. And I just thought, let's just read the preambles and see what it says. And there you have that. But what this does spiritually, folks, if you're talking justice, which is love made manifest in the world, you're raising that question, what does it mean to be a human being? Does it matter if life on Earth continues? I mean, look up at the stars, and in all probability, there's many other planets in the universe that support life at different levels of evolution. Does it matter if we just go kaput or not? Is there any meaning that gives meaning to meaning? Does your life matter? Does my life matter? And if we sense that it might, if it is our experience that life might matter, what do these times call of us? What does they summon from us? What might be our calling in these times? Not just in terms of climate change, but amongst all the issues of justice, including war, including poverty, including racism and persecution, and so on. What might it call for from us? At which point something possibly shrinks back in many of you and thinks, well, yes, but I don't have much to offer. I've only got a mite, said the widow to Jesus, but here is my mite. A small coin. And that's something, it's a story that carries forward. We never heard what happened to the rich man's charitable donation, no doubt tax deductible. The parable is of the widow's mite. But why? When we make an effort on behalf of climate change or anything else, why does it matter? And to me, it matters because of what I think of as the Zen of personal integrity. It matters because when we hold something in the light, including, importantly, our own shortcomings, including holding our own shortcomings in the light, where we recognize our hypocrisies, even though we know we will carry on in that direction, at least be honest, at least stand in the truth. So often we block ourselves from seeing the truth because we know we would fall short of its standard. In spiritual life, this is why you have confession, not least for oneself and before the divine. In the Lord's Prayer, this is why you have forgive us our debts. And I consider the word debts to be the best translation from the Greek, because the Greek word used suggests a sense of obligation that binds, which is a bit different from trespasses or sins. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors. Or if you find that language to be off-putting, you can make a very good and helpful translation by saying, forgive us our karma as we forgive the karma that is held against us. Because as Raymond Panikar, the late Hindu, Christian, Indian, Spanish theologian puts it, only forgiveness breaks the law of karma. Only forgiveness frees us from our debts to one another, what we hold against one another, the way that we are locked into the karma of our lives. Only forgiveness breaks the law of karma. And that is where in our Christian tradition, in my view, we have such deep insight. The insight of an honesty, the insight of a commitment to truth. Quakers, an old name for them, friends of seekers of the truth. A commitment to ferreting out truth, whether relative or whether absolute. That helps us to see clearly. The truth shall set you free, said a great spiritual teacher. What is the Greek word translated as truth? It's a feminine noun, aletheia, A-L-E-T-H-I-A, which means both truth in the sense we would normally use it and reality revealed. Gandhi likewise points out that the Sanskrit word satya, from which he derives satyagraha, or truth force, equally means truth in the ordinary sense and truth as reality revealed. And one of the oldest Upanishads tells us that Satya is Dharma. Satya is that which is set in place. Dharma, from the Sanskrit, meaning to set in place, to stand firm, to lay out, if you like, the ordering of reality. Or in the words of another teacher, I am the way, I am the Dharma, the truth, the Satya, and the life. So spiritual activism in troubled times, our title tonight. I put it to you that the deepest thing that we can do is to develop our relationships with truth. Don't be obsessive, don't be hair-shirt. Don't hide from the truth because you know you're not going to live in accordance with how perhaps you should be living. Forgive us our debts as we forgive our debtors, a perpetual process. But do stand in the truth. Because then a very powerful thing, in my view, starts to happen. We start to constellate truth around us. If we are not prepared to go along with a lie in our company, in our family, in our community, or whatever, if we gently stand for and in the truth by holding it in the light, holding it in the light of life, that configures things around us. Some of you here may have heard me tell or retell Carl Jung's Rainmaker story. I won't tell it right now. It can come up in the Q&A if you want. But basically the point of it is that when we bring our spirits into alignment with truth, reality starts to change around us. And certainly social reality starts to change around us. And this is something that, no matter how young or old we are, no matter how powerful or powerless we are, each one of us can do. And from there, each one of us can contribute more deeply to making community. From there, each one of us can contribute to undercutting consumerism. Consumerism as consumption that is in excess of what is needed for dignified sufficiency in life. Because you start stripping away the lies. You actually become disillusioned, as Oswald Chambers, a 19th century Scottish cleric, said in a sermon. You follow the discipline of disillusionment. Because only by disillusioning ourselves are we liberated from our illusions. Do we see life clearly? So friends, I'm going to draw to a close now, so we've got plenty of discussion time. But I'm putting it to you that as Quakers and as sympathizers who might be here tonight, our deepest calling is to be friends of seekers of the truth. And the truth will set us free. The truth will guide us on that journey. I wish I could come up with a quicker fix for that. I wish I could come up with something more satisfying than that. But I would put it with you, and I will leave you with one little story. I'll put it to you that certainly inasmuch as climate change is driven by crazy consumption because we can't get no satisfaction, so we try and try and try. Climate change is being driven by not standing in the truth, because we know that material things will only satisfy up to a certain point of fundamental needs satisfied. And then the satisfaction plateaus out and it becomes waste. So I put it to you that climate change is actually confronting humankind with something we need to be confronted by. It's confronting us with our, at least in part, with inauthentic living. And it's calling us back to authenticity. And so I leave you with a little story. I'll show you the book it's from. It's a wonderful little book by Professor Jackson, published by Penguin Classics, A Celtic Miscellany. There's from the Book of Kells there. It's the final story in this book. I won't read it to you, I'll just retell it. And the story is, and this is from 16th or 17th century Ireland, that as the animals were getting on 2 by 2 onto Noah's Ark, the devil, of course, was watching what was happening. And the devil thought, ho, ho, so they're all getting onto a boat. This could be fun. So he sneaked in and hid in the bottom of the boat. But what he didn't know was that the shipwright, having noticed that he was not on the passenger manifest, had decided to sabotage the ark by leaving a nail out so that it would gradually sink. The devil gets into the ark and he's down in the bottom of the bilges. I'm sorry, folks, I'm just too tempted. I'm just too tempted at this moment, if I can reach for another one here. Aspects of the religious history of the Isle of Lewis, where I come from, by the Reverend Murdo Macaulay of the Free Church of Scotland. And, and the Reverend Macaulay tells exactly what happened on this occasion. Because according to the Reverend Finlayson, who was the minister in my part of the Isle of Lewis in the early 1800s, what happened is that the ark was actually built on the Isle of Lewis. And I'd put it to you that this is very likely true, because I mean, where else would you go for to build a boat but somewhere like the Outer Hebrides? And as the ark was being built, Noah went off to Ness in the north of the island to get a bull to put into the ark. And when he was away, the carpenters came to Mrs. Noah wanting to be paid. And she said, you'll have to wait till he comes back. But he got back with the bull that night, and first thing the next morning, he was off to Uig in the west of Lewis to get a ram for the ark. Now, the point has been made to me. Is it not a little bit sexist that he went for bull and for a ram? And I say, no. If you knew the part of Lewis that I come from, the parish of North Loch, you wouldn't have to go any further afield to find the perfect female of the species. So it's perfectly appropriate what Noah was up to. So off he goes, you see. And eventually the carpenters catch up with him. And they get their money. And they head off into Stornoway, which of course is Babylon. And they're standing in the pub drinking their money away when there's a crack of thunder and the downpour starts. And the Reverend Finlayson says, documented in this book of sermons, too late, oh, too late, people of Lewis. The chance was given to you and you missed it. So that is the background context of the animals coming in 2 by 2 and the devil's gone down. Somebody's not muted. Could you make sure you're all muted, please? Could somebody, Pip or somebody, could you mute whoever's cutting in there? The devil's hiding down the ark and the waters are rising, you see. And as the waters are rising, there was one thing that the devil had not taken on board. That before pulling up the anchor, Noah was going to raise his hand and bless the ark. And as Noah raised his hand, the white hot fire of love beamed from his hand. And the devil couldn't stand it. So the devil had to find a way out. The devil had to find a way out of the ark. And what was the only way out? It was that hole that the shipwright had left by not putting the nail in. So the devil changed into a snake and wiggled into the hole. But alas, friends, too fat, too fat. And he got stuck in the hole. And so he remained there until at last the ark came to a rest on Mount Ararat. It actually stopped on the way on the Hebrides, but that's another story I won't bother with you tonight, but it explains how we have the animals we have in the Hebrides. But the punchline of the story, as retold by Professor Jackson, where's he gone? I've lost him. The punchline of the story is that the missing nail was both the worst and the best nail in the ark. The missing nail, which almost brought calamity in this story, which of course I am taking as metaphor. The missing nail was what precipitated their survival. That's what got the devil stuck. And I put it to you with that ridiculous, but I find delightful story. I put it to you that this is how we have to face bad things happening in the world, like climate change. We have to say, how do we use this to deepen us spiritually? How do we use this to draw us into truth, to draw us into community? As it said here in Govan, shit happens, what matters is how you shovel it. How can we shovel it to turn that which stinks into compost from which new life can grow? Thank you.